Hello, everyone. I would like to say thank you first for having me today. It's a great honor for me to be part of this event. I am Risako Sakai. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a PhD candidate in applied anthropology at Oregon State University, USA. I am currently back in Okinawa, Japan, conducting my doctoral research. So my dissertation project is on marine conservation and indigenous resurgence, focusing on indigeneity, decolonizing, and indigenous methodologies in Okinawa. I was born and raised in Okinawa. I identify myself as an Okinawan woman. Okinawans are indigenous to the Ryukyu Islands. I am assuming that many people might think that Okinawa is merely a region of Japan, or even Japan as a homogeneous nation. I'd like to briefly explain the history of Okinawa. So Okinawa is located in the southernmost part of Japan, as you can see on this map. Although Okinawa is likely to be seen as a region of Japan, Okinawa used to be an independent kingdom called the Ryukyu Kingdom, but was colonized by Japan. The Ryukyu Kingdom was established in 1429. In 1609, Japan, particularly the southern part of Japan called Satsuma, started colonizing the Ryukyu Kingdom for the economic purposes. Between 1872 and 1879, Japan officially annexed the Ryukyu Kingdom, and they named it Okinawa Prefecture, which is like a state in the US. World War II has caused a lot of trauma to us. 1 in 4 Okinawans died during World War II, which is called the Battle of Okinawa. The US military landed only on Okinawa. Japan intentionally prolonged the Battle of Okinawa to lessen major assaults in Japan. Right after World War II, Okinawa was occupied by the US military until 1972. In 1972, Okinawa reverted to Japan, hoping that the Japanese constitution, particularly Article 9, would help Okinawa get rid of all the US military bases. So some of you may wonder what the cultural difference between Okinawa and then Japan. So I put 2 pictures on this slide. The yellow kimono is Okinawan kimono, and the bottom right corner is Japanese kimono. In fact, Okinawans have been discriminated and oppressed for long. For instance, in 1903, Japan hosted a human zoo exhibiting Okinawans, Ainu. Those are 2 major groups, indigenous groups in Japan. Taiwanese, Chinese, Korean, and so forth. The man in the upper left corner talks about his experience after World War II, after the Battle of Okinawa. During the Battle of Okinawa, he served as a child soldier and survived the Battle of Okinawa when he was an undergrad student, which is after the World War II. He found recruiting flyers saying from Japan, saying that the third country nationals, including Ryukyuans, that means Okinawans, are strictly prohibited. So the third country nationals means foreigners under the Japanese imperialism. Moreover, even after the Battle of Okinawa, Japanese assimilation was accelerated. Children were prohibited to speak Okinawan languages at school with a punitive shame of dialect placard, Hogen Fuda, which is on the right picture up there. Students were forced to hang it around the neck for a whole day when they spoke Okinawan languages at school. This colonial tactic was implemented on many indigenous peoples, such as Native Americans, to erase indigenous languages. And those practices, because of those practices, Okinawan's identity was transformed into a shame or stigma. Today, militarization is a big issue in Okinawa. 70.4% of American military bases in Japan are concentrated in Okinawa, which accounts for only 0.6% of Japan's total land territory. Right after the Battle of Okinawa, the US military took over Okinawa's land and built bases, while civilians were housed into concentration camps. This is why the Futenma military base or some bases are surrounded by residential houses and still contains Okinawan tombs without agreement. Okinawa's economy depends on tourism as well. However, tourism commodifies Okinawan land, ocean, culture, and people. The configuration of militarism and tourism characterize Okinawa as a romanticized and feminized figure of paradise. This image is a tourism advertisement on the right. As you can see, Okinawa is feminized as a romantic or sexual love, and a half-naked woman is displayed at the beach. The current situation of Okinawa shows how dual colonialism by Japan and the US largely affect us today, where we have to survive rather than thrive. Tourism sustains Okinawa's dependency on Japan through the Japanese government's financial support and tourists from Japan. Okinawa's economy hinges upon dependency on 3 Ks: Kichi, military bases, Kokyo-koji, public works, and Kanko, tourism. Those 3 factors produce Okinawa's dependency. Many breadwinners in Okinawa engage in public works, especially construction works to build facilities for governmental needs, military bases, and tourism. Otherwise, many job options are related to tourism. These pie chart illustrate that more people in Okinawa are employed in the industries of construction and tourism in comparison to the average of Japan. As such, the complexity of Okinawan indigeneity stems from dual colonialism by Japan and the US. The urgency of self-determination arises from the colonial dependency that disempowers and displaces Okinawans. As a matter of fact, Okinawa holds the worst rate of child poverty, the lowest income, and the highest rate of suicide. In 2008, the United Nations Human Rights Council called on Japan to recognize the Okinawans as an indigenous people. Nonetheless, indigeneity of Okinawans is not widely acknowledged due to the colonial structure of Japan. For example, Japaneseness conflates race, language, citizenship, and culture, as if Japan were racially and ethnically homogeneous under the emperor as an absolute father of Japanese. In other words, individuals who are Japanese citizens with a Japanese nationality must speak the same language, act like the same race, and practice the same culture. The structure is sustained by institutions. The educational system is designed to, quote unquote, generate Japanese citizens with the monolanguage and culture. And this system, speaking Okinawan languages, is viewed as a, quote unquote, inferior behavior. As I spoke earlier, assimilation is still ongoing, still happening in Okinawa. I often use the analogy of domestic violence to describe what growing up in Okinawa felt like. It was interesting to me that I encountered another activist who used the same analogy the other day. Living in Okinawa is, as an Okinawan, feels like being in an abusive relationship. When you are in an abusive relationship, it is quite hard to identify what is going on or even to recognize how abusive it is. So due to obscure structural violence under dual colonialism, many Okinawans feel that Okinawa is divided and conquered. That is, Japan and the US divide Okinawans and then make us fight against each other. In so doing, Japan and the US can just watch and enjoy us struggling. insisting that they have nothing to do with Okinawa's issue, not their issues. So many Okinawans are left confused without knowing this is dual colonialism. So this is why I put disappear in my for the title of my presentation. So I needed to remove myself from this abusive relationship, or in order to understand what's going on in Okinawa. So I decided to pursue my graduate degrees in the US. Studying the US helped me name the structure, or name dual colonialism. Indeed, I was able to gain a language to describe and understand the situation in Okinawa, my experience and feelings. Education helped me develop consciousness around injustice. At the same time, I constantly experience and witness these ideologies like many isms, like racism, sexism. For example, when I was a teaching assistant in person, a few students marked out my accent. One white woman student emailed me that I should not talk about politics of the US because I was an immigrant. We still live in the structure that colonialism has established. Colonialism is not an event, but a structure. That's the video. Sorry, when I participated in Black Lives Matter. So as James Baldwin, as American writer and voice of the American Civil Rights Movement, said, education helps raise awareness of injustice. However, that also brings the realization that we are at war. When I was struggling in the US, another graduate student who was an African-American woman shared this quote with me. Zola Neale Hurston was an anthropologist in the 1930s. If you're silent about your pain, they'll kill you and say you enjoyed it. Referring to this quote, my friend encouraged me to speak up. Her encouragement largely helped me engage in activism. In addition, I met a trans woman who moved to the US because she was discriminated in her home country. She mentioned that home is a verb. That is, you can build your community on your own. Community is where you restore yourself and where you can go back anytime you want and need. The other day, I had a meeting with Dr. Mehana. She's another person who recommended meeting with her due to the similarities of our research interest. The meeting was over Zoom, and it was very cordial. We were just getting to know each other. When we started talking about my research, she told me that I should not insist on being indigenous. At first, I was a little confused, but she explained that we, including her and me, we do not need to prove our indigeneity to the world because our existence is indigenous already. Our existence is enough to be indigenous. This conversation brought tears to my to my eyes. So those are the foundation of my research and engagement in activism. So today I'm conducting my fieldwork at Henoko. So you can see where Henoko is located on the map. In 1995 to 1996, the US and Japan agreed to consolidate and reduce the US military bases in Okinawa, particularly the Futenma base, which you can see the blue part on the map. In 2003, back then, US Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, flew over the Futenma base and declared it as the most dangerous base in the world, as it is located literally in the middle of the residential area. For the relocation of Futenma base, the US and Japan decided on Henoko by landfilling the Ora Bay, since there's already a base, Camp Schwab on land. Although the Japanese government and the US military agreed upon the relocation of Futenma base to Henoko, The Okinawan government and people in Okinawa disagreed. Oda Bay has a rich marine ecosystem, hosting more than 5,800 species involving dugongs. Dugongs look like manatees, which are on the IUCN red list as an endangered species. There had been multiple protests organized to hold the relocation or landfill. As a result, the referendum took place in 2019, where more than 70% of residents in Okinawa voted against the relocation plan. Many Okinawan peoples were pleased about the result, democratic result. Nonetheless, the Japanese government ignored the result and continued the landfill at Henoko. There are sitting protests going on, especially by old people who experienced the Battle of Okinawa or post-war. Yet the Japanese government keeps sending riot officers to Okinawa and then securities to Okinawa in order to remove those protesters. 3 dugongs were found at Henoko. However, in 2019, one of 3 dugongs was found dead. At this site, dual colonialism is presented. The other day, I saw 2 US servicemen looking down on the Japanese securities, riot officers, and Okinawan protesters. They were just looking at us. One of the protesters was a veteran. He's an American man. So he spoke to them through the microphone, telling them that they might believe what they do is right and just, but that is a delusion. They did not respond and just kept watching us. This moment showed that the US military would just watch us suffer and wait until we die. Moreover, I usually see tourists passing by at the protest site. They often film us as if protests were a performance to entertain them. Tourists even enjoy our suffer and struggle. We have to act to make changes. So activism is to bring hope. In addition, there are many diaspora Okinawans in the world. At the end of last year, we got together and wrote an open letter to the Vice Japan. The Vice Japan produced very problematic show documentaries about Okinawa, which rest on racial gaslighting, patriarchy, etc., ignoring the dual colonialism and transgenerational traumas that Okinawans carry. We published this open letter in both English and Japanese. We have not received any responses from Vice yet. I would like to end my presentation with this Okinawan proverb, so-called Kugani Kutuba, which literally means golden language, as those are teachings from our ancestors. This proverb says, Jinto wararan kuturu warariru. This means that true happiness lives in children, not in money. Activism involves reclaiming our indigeneity and creating a space for our future generations to thrive beyond survive. And thank you. That's all for my presentation. Thank you, everyone. And if you have any question or feedback, please feel free to email